Snoring Beauty by Bruce Hale, illustrated by Howard Finer. Long, long ago, about 602 years ago, last Friday at 7 p.m., Fairy Standard Time to be exact, the childless king Gluteus and his wife Queen Esophagus got lucky at last. "A baby girl!" Queen Esophagus cried. "I'll eat to that," said King Gluteus. For the rest of us, peasants and milkmaids and frogs, it was all business as usual. Yada yada, hippity hop. The king and queen threw a big wingding for their daughter's christening. They invited every fairy from far and wide, but wouldn't you know it, they left one out. This was a really cranky fairy named Bibo, who was off hosting a garlic festival. On christening day, the baby girl was named Princess Drachmina Lofresca Malvolio Margarine. Poor little tadpole. She smiled and cooed anyway. The dining hall bulged with lords and ladies, and up at the main table with the king and queen sat 7 of the funkiest fairies you've ever seen. Hexus and Blexus, Nostraline and Umpadine, Fleabitis and Tintinitis, and Fred, who wasn't really a fairy, but no one had the heart to tell him. And just as they began a round of rude fairy songs, the king clapped his hands. "Time to bless the baby." "Eh?" said Tintinitis, who was half deaf. "Slime with flesh and gravy? No thanks, I'll be back in a twinkle." And she waddled off. One by one, fairies shuffled past to bless Princess Drachmina Lofresca Malvolio Margarine, Marge for short. "She will be the most beauteous maiden in the land," said Hexus. "She will be the wittiest," said Blexus. And on, best dancer, blah, 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 best singer, blah, 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 nicest penmanship, blah, 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 yada, yada, hippity hop. Bam! The door blew open. There stood Bibo the fairy. She looked like trouble, and she smelled like garlic. "So sorry I'm late," she snarled sweetly. "That carrier pigeon must have eaten my invitation." She stuck her big bazoo into the crib and she barked, "When this baby turns 16, she will be run over by a pie wagon and die." Tintinitis returned just at that moment. "Eh? What's that?" she said. "She'll turn into a dragon and fly?" "Die!" snapped Bibo. "Spy?" asked Tintinitis. "Die!" shouted the garlicky one. "Oh my!" said Tintinitis. With a grumble and a growl, Bibo blasted off. Tintinitis returned to the King Gluteus and Queen Esophagus. She could not undo Bibo's gift, but she could bamboozle it. "My blessing is that, instead of turning into a dragon, but Bibo said," the king began. "Your daughter will become a sleeping dragon," Tintinitis continued, "and one day she'll be awakened with, a prince," said the queen hopefully. "A quince," said the fairy. "Good idea." And poof, she was gone. The first thing next day, King Gluteus banned all pie wagons from the kingdom. In fact, he banned all pies, even mud pies. They should stop the curse, he said the king. "Let them eat cake," sang the Queen Esophagus. Years hopped along like a toad with arthritis. Princess Marge blossomed and grew, and as she grew, she became kind and beautiful and sweet and clever, and all the fairies promised, Marge could sing like a nightingale, dance like the sunlight on the water, sew a wedding dress blindfolded, make a chocolate cake from dirt and rocks, and build a house in a single day. Yada yada hippity hop. The fairies forgot just one thing. She was too perfect. Nobody wanted to play with a girl who could do everything twice as well as they could. Princess Marge was lonely. The day the princess turned 16, an old woman in a wagon rolled up to the castle. "Let me in," she pleaded. "I bring a yummy treats for the princess." The young guard spied a wagon-load of pastries around on wheels. A sweet smell made his belly rumble. Yummy nummy indeed, after so many years. He didn't know a pie from a pollywog. The guard opened the gates. The wagon trundled inside, and at that very moment, what are the odds, I ask you? Marge was crossing the road to take the cake to the shop. The street was steep, the wagon wobbled, and before she knew it, the pie wagon swerved and it crunched over her foot. "Yow!" cried Prince Marge, and just just as Tinnitus foretold. Alla blam! Marge turned into a dragon, and alla beep! She fell asleep. Now legend says that the whole castle conked out too. Yeah, right. Here's what really happened. The sleeping dragon princess began to snore. Shh. Shh. Besides being the fanciest dancer and the best cake baker in the kingdom, Princess Marge was naturally the loudest snoring dragon. Shh. Shh. Did everyone rush to congratulate Marge on her perfect snores? No, they did not. No one comforted her enchanting sleep. The dragon princess dreamed lonely dreams. Days passed. No one could sleep with the racket and ruckus. Those with carriages visited far-off kingdoms. Those without wore earplugs and shouted. The king did what the kings always do. He made a proclamation. King Gluteus wants you to break the curse and awaken the sleeping daughter with a quince. Use of quince to be determined by applicant. Reward, half the kingdom, the princess hand in marriage, and a set of elf-made garden furniture. Employees of the castle not eligible. If the princess wakens and remains a dragon, tough luck, and you have to marry her. Offer not valid in the kingdoms of Smorg, Spiffle, and Quog. Void where prohibited. Men came to test their luck. With brass and bluster and bright ideas, they tried to awaken the dragon princess. One spooned quince curry between her lips. Marge snored on. One tickled her with the leaves of quince tree. Shh. Marge snored on. One pelted her with ripe quince. Close, but no cigar. Marge snored on. Months passed. Suitors came and suitors went. They sang quince songs and they baked quince pies, and they told quince jokes and sighed quince sighs, and they built a quince alarm clock that squirted jam and jelly, and they made a quince-filled rubber ball to bounce upon her belly. But nothing worked. Yada, yada, hippity-hop. Then one day a dusty young man clip-clopped into town. "What's that awful noise?" he asked a milkmaid. "What?" she shouted. "I can't hear you. I'm wearing earplugs." She took them out. "I said, what's that noise?" bellowed the man. "No need to shout," said the milkmaid, and she told him Marge's sad story. The man studied the dragon princess. She was pretty cute for a dragon. He timed her snores. Shh. He leaned into the blast, ears ringing. Shh. His hair blew back and he puckered up. Shh. Then smack. Blink. Those dragon eyes popped open and yada yada hippity hop. Marge's scales melted, her tail shriveled, and she shrank back into a woman girl again. "Are you a wizard?" she asked the man. "Golly, no, I'm a prince," she said. He said, "Prince Quince, exact." Well, the king kept his word, and in 2 shakes of a frog's flipper, the prince and the princess got hitched. This time all the fairies in the land were invited. The kingdom whooped it up with a hey nonny nonny and a hot cha-cha. "Do you love me?" asked the princess. "With all my heart," said the prince. "Even though I'm the best at everything?" Prince Quince smiled. "Honey, nobody's perfect." At last the newlyweds tiptoed off to their chambers, where they whispered sweet nothings and drifted to sleep. And later that night something awoke the prince. Shh. Shh. Prince Quince sighed. He kissed his wife's cheek and stuffed some earplugs into his ears, and he rolled over. And despite the truly royal ruckus, they lived happily and noisily ever after.
Haha, that's so funny.